Hey everybody, welcome back to Why Is This a Podcast? I am your host, Kieran Watts. Lovely to see you. I would say if I could see you, but due to COVID restrictions, I still can't. Anyway, folks, I'm really excited about my guest on this episode, and I can't wait to jump into the questions that I've meticulously lined up. See, I even wrote them down. But before I do just want to talk about one particular issue that's been irritating me and has been irritating many people in our country, which is the shambolic failure of the government to provide nutrition adequately to the most vulnerable children in our society. We're a country allegedly prosperous, and yet parents are being sent chicken nearly out of date, bread not fit for consumption. It is a disgrace. I'm not alone in thinking that, and just so you know, I'm not a hand-wringing left-wing activist. I place myself firmly in the center. But I do feel that it is a desecration of the trust that voters place in our elected officials to fail to provide to the most vulnerable food. Children shouldn't starve in one of the most prosperous nations on earth. So, what I just like to say, if you can afford to, donate to your local food bank or to a charity that provides support. Because if the government isn't going to help us through this, we're going to have to help each other. As I said, I'm very excited about my guest tonight. He's an award-winning author, a musician, and an ambassador for ActionAid UK. Please welcome to Why Is This a Podcast, the wonderful Giles Paley-Phillips. Giles, nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Kieran. Thanks for having me on.
What do you make of the monologue?
I echo your words entirely. I think it's been a rather stark wake-up call for everybody this week, seeing the images that have been floating around social media. So I echo your words entirely.
Thank you very much. I live and die on other people's approval.
Oh, you shouldn't do that.
I'm joking. Although in terms of other people's approval, please like and subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please like and subscribe. I just want to be loved. I'm so glad to have you with me. As I mentioned, you're an ambassador for ActionAid UK.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange title as an ambassador because it does sound sort of regal in some ways, but no, I mean, it's like being a patron. It's someone who can, I just help them by kind of giving them a voice on social media and helping some of the work they do. And I've done some fundraising for them. So yeah, ambassador does sound quite grandiose, doesn't it? It's not really as grandiose as that.
Giles, obviously you're an ambassador for ActionAid UK. You're also one half of the team that hosts the podcast Blank, Jim Daly being the other, and it's described on Twitter as being one that delves into those moments where things aren't going so well. You also host a little bit of positive. Could Could you tell us a little bit about those two podcast series and what they're about, where they came from?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Blank Podcast came out of a time a few years ago when I was really struggling with writing. I mean, obviously, that's my main gig is writing, and yeah, going through a kind of inspirational block or blank, as we've come to refer to the podcast, and yeah, just finding it very difficult to be inspired and to put words down on the page. Really, like logistically, it was just a bit of a nightmare. Uh, so that's kind of where the sort of origins of that podcast came from. And then I was talking to Jim. We have become friends via kind of Twitter, and he was going through a similar situation. He's a stand-up comedian, and he was finding it difficult with performance. It was more about live performance for him, and he was having his blank was live performance and having the fear basically of getting back on stage. And so we sort of, we're talking about this, and I said, I've got this idea for a podcast. I thought, maybe we could get some advice and from people that, on the outset look like they've got their shit together, and we can maybe sort of get some tips on how we can get through our own kind of blank moments in the various kind of things that we do creatively. And that's kind of how it started. And just lined up a few kind of well-known people that I'd kind of accosted on social media to come on, a bit like you did with me. So how it works these days, isn't it? And and then it sort of kind of went from there, really. And we're now nearly 100 episodes in and still learning.
For legal purposes, I'll just ask that we amend that to approached.
Okay.
Opposed to accosted.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, approached.
Accosted has certain connotations of what happened recently at the US Capitol.
And it does. You're right. We shouldn't. Yeah, we have to be careful with the words we use. But yeah, okay, not accosted, but approached gently, from afar. Asked very sincerely and politely if you would come on your podcast, and I would come on your podcast. So yes, that's kind of how it started. And yeah, we're nearly 100 podcasts in. We've talked to some incredible people and gleaned some amazing advice on how to get through those moments.
That feeds into my next question, because my next question is like, what have you learned? What is the podcast you've hosted? Both blank and a little bit of positive. What have they taught you in the time that you've been doing them?
I mean, they've taught me so much, actually. I mean, they've taught me a lot about obviously getting through those moments, particularly with blank. I mean, the little bit of positive, which I do with Julia Bradby. That's been a fantastic journey as well. We don't talk to sort of so like we're not talking to sort of celebrities as such. We're talking to people that are sort of well known in their fields. But again, it's finding out. I mean, that's particularly about finding out positive stories and inspiring kind of stories that hopefully people can take away from. But blank, I would think it's taught me so much about myself. I mean, Jim and I refer to it as our therapy session every week, because we get to sit for an hour, sometimes 2 hours, talking to people that that are heroes of ours or we're massively inspired by, and we get to hear about their stories and how they've treaded the creative worlds that they've been in, or if it's it's not just creative people. We have sports people on and the business people, and we've had a politician as well. So whatever their industry that they're in, and it's interesting to sort of find out and learn how they navigate this wonderful thing which is life. And and I think I've learned a lot more about the human condition doing the podcast, for sure.
What politician did you have on?
Caroline Lucas.
Oh,
Green Party.
Yeah, Green Party.
Very nice lady.
I've been told.
Yes.
I studied politics briefly.
Ah, okay. Yeah, no, she's a very, very nice person, and very sincere, actually, which you can't always say about politicians.
but that you can very rarely say that.
Yeah.
Mm. Um, well, obviously, you're a creative guy. You're a writer.
Mhm.
The first line of your Twitter bio is "I write books," which is
Kind of sums it up.
I wish people's Twitter bios were as sort of straightforward as that. To be honest with you.
You can make them quite convoluted, can't you? I think when I first joined Twitter, I was very much more
Yeah.
convoluted about actually sort of wrote the titles of my books out. But I thought, you know what? I've written quite a few now, and you've only got so many characters you can use. I write books kind of sums it up a little bit.
I should probably do that for myself. I host a podcast.
Yeah.
Giles Paley-Phillips was on it. Watch it.
Yeah.
Of course, writing isn't your only creative outlet because you're a massive fan of music. You're very, very passionate about music.
Mm.
Where did that passion about music begin? Because I hated studying music when I was in school.
Oh, me too. I wasn't particularly good. I think because you're kind of stuck in front of a glockenspiel or a keyboard that doesn't kind of work very well, and you're sort of told to play, you know, various notes in sequence, and learning and like sheet music as well. I mean, that I was never very academic, so the idea of kind of learning sheet music as another thing as well was never appealing. We had really, I mean, we had good music teachers at my secondary school, but we just a lot of us were just disengaged with it. And it's not sometimes until you find your own love of music that you kind of start to get into music in a different way. I think it wasn't until I was about 16, 15, 16 that I started getting into, I mean, it's the 90s, so I was into kind of grunge music and getting loud guitars and things like that. And then that's kind of where it started. And then you sort of meet like-minded people, and you know, it's, you know, what life is like. We sort of try and find our tribes, don't you? And then, you know, you find those people that you have that thing in common with, and then you're just ravenous for that particular thing. And I was ravenous for music. I mean, I was just, you know, yeah, I just spend all my money on music, and I ended up buying a guitar, and I'm wanting to join a band and start a band, and was always really keen to sort of write my own material and stuff. So that's kind of where it started. And then, yeah, like I say, meeting some guys that I wanted to play in a band with, and we all had a desire to kind of become rock and roll stars.
I never got on with learning to play an instrument.
Mm.
I said I hated music when I was in secondary school. I didn't enjoy the music lessons, but I did love music. But I've resigned myself a long time ago to the fact I'm never going to be patient enough to learn an instrument. So,
Oh,
yeah,
it's a shame because I think everyone should learn an instrument, if because I think you can learn it to differing degrees. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a particularly great guitar player, but I can play to the level where I can actually sort of write my own composition. You know, I can write stuff. So I think you don't have to be like a really virtuoso player. You can still get some enjoyment out of it.
but I think I'm more of a listener than a player.
Fair enough.
But I love listening to music. People, we love seeing music, which brings
Mm.
me on to my next question, which is, you've toured the UK,
Hmm.
you played at Glastonbury, and you can't do that now, obviously,
Mm.
um, given the pandemic. Um, how's that adjustment been for you? Like from the pre-COVID world of being able to tour and play live gigs, and now you can't.
I mean, it's even sort of at a lower level than that. Just being able to get in a room with the other guys in the band that I'm in now. Burnt House is the band I'm in at the moment. Just getting in a room with them to rehearse and write is, you know, regardless of like playing gigs. I mean, we don't do a lot of gigs these days anyway, but I think yeah, just getting in a room to play together. I mean, we've tried sort of, I've sent over stuff via GarageBand, and we've been doing a bit of home recording and sort of sending ideas to one another, but obviously it's not the same. And some of my favorite moments are in a rehearsal room when you're kind of coming up with ideas together, and you've got that camaraderie, and very much like people have with team sports. You have that banter and camaraderie, and in the dressing room. If it's if you're in a football team or whatever, it's very similar. Being in a band, you just have that, and that kind of extra dimensional kind of feeling between the three of with three of us in the band, of knowing changes in the music, and when we improvise stuff's really exciting because you're kind of all in sync with one another. So yeah, those things are the things I miss, I think, at the moment. We haven't rehearsed for over a year now, so that's been hard.
It's because I study drama and theatre, studies at A level, and so I enjoy performing. Obviously, not music as such, but I do enjoy performing, and it's I think if I was a full-time performer, the idea of not being able to do the acting, do the even if I was behind the scenes, for example, not being able to do that, it would strike me quite hard. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. Where a large part of it is it's about the people you do it with. It's about over time, whether you're doing a gig as a band or whether you're doing a play. It's a large part of it is the camaraderie that you build with the people that you work with, who are equally passionate about um, performing this, about delivering this to people, for want of a better expression.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's something we've talked on our podcast a lot about, on Blank, because we talk to a lot of performers and, actors, and particularly with actors, because they will either on TV, or if they're theatre actors, it's like joining a family. And you have those very intimate times with people, and I can imagine that's a big hole in your life if you don't have that.
I had Gareth David Lloyd, from Torchwood, Doctor Who Casualty. He was on the podcast before. Similar sentiments about it. And I'm like, with the row over education, for example, at the moment, with exams being cancelled, I'm like, if my drama exam had been cancelled, there would have been so much work that would have gone to waste with the people I was performing with. So yeah, it's there's an intimacy with the audience, but also with the people you're on stage with and the people you're backstage with. So it's a fantastic point. It's not a smooth transition. I'm still getting the hang of this.
It's okay, no worries.
You've got about 100 episodes. 98 episodes at the moment, at the time of recording.
Yeah. This week was 98. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not on 98 yet. So I'm still getting the hang of this thing. But I want to go to ActionAid UK. And as I mentioned in the intro, you're an ambassador for ActionAid UK, which, for people who don't know, works to support girls and women in poverty. Twofold question. What how do you support ActionAid UK, and what got you into ActionAid UK, into supporting them?
I think it started. I was approached by a lady called Susan Anderson, who works predominantly with sort of the well-known people that are associated with ActionAid, and I think they had a campaign for schools, like a school story campaign, and I think that's how I first came on board with them. And we did a few events going in schools, and I think they had a writing, like it was a writing competition, and I did some talks on their behalf, and yeah, that was really fantastic. And it's a campaign that they've continued. They've done it like with other people subsequently, and then yeah, I've just sort of done a few other events for them. I ran the London Marathon for them a few years back, and I often put up get involved in campaigns they're doing by doing posts on social media, and yeah, and going into I've been in the office a few times to help with things. So yeah, so I try and be as hands-on as I can, but obviously they've got a lot of people that they work with. So yeah, it's a wonderful organisation, and very proud to be involved with them.
I'm sure we can get ActionAid UK's details and description. And yeah, and it's a lovely cause. As I say lovely, perhaps that was the wrong word. An important cause, because obviously there's nothing lovely about girls and women in poverty, by any stretch of the imagination, as I mentioned in my intro. What we're seeing with current state of like food support to vulnerable people, and obviously we've got a massive crisis during the pandemic and during lockdown measures of domestic violence, and it's horrible to contemplate. And I'm aware of the fact that we're discussing this, as two men. Not that men can't be the subject of domestic violence, but of course, we're talking about ActionAid UK and the work that focuses on women and girls. Do you think that during the pandemic, the work of ActionAid assumes heightened importance? Has it adapted? Do you think has that kind of work adapted to the pandemic and its challenges?
Well, yes, yeah, I think they've obviously been very busy, and the thing about ActionAid is they work internationally, and they work in the UK as well, so that they are stretched very far afield. So a lot of their work will have been ongoing, I should imagine. But yeah, I'm sure that at this time, I know there's been a few campaigns that I've highlighted, but yeah, generally speaking, I should imagine they've had a very, very challenging time, like a lot of charities have. There's the flip side of that is obviously also them sort of remaining. Obviously, they're very vital at the moment, but actually, being able to keep afloat as well themselves with regards to fundraising as well. So, that's obviously a big part for a lot of charities at the moment, is actually being able to continue to do their work, because funding has drastically dropped.
And obviously people have less money in their pockets, and
yeah, quite, and they can't put the events on that they would normally do. So there's all those things. So it's trying to make sure that they can navigate through this time, and obviously still provide the service that they do.
My final show of 2020, I think I announced there because homelessness is an issue that's close to my heart. So I announced on my final show of 2020, that I was making a donation to Shelter Cymru monthly because of the homelessness crisis that we've got, that the pandemic has only exacerbated. And as I say now, I'd encourage anyone who can donate to ActionAid.
Yes, please do. Please do. They do amazing ones. Just go and check out what they do, because they do incredible things all around the world. So
and that's free advertising for ActionAid.
yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. It's before I let you go, I promise I will at some point. Before I let you go, writing. Your writing, as I said earlier, but I'll say it again, because it's very rare that I get an award-winning author on the show. You're an award-winning author.
I am. I've won a couple of awards. Very, very lucky.
People's Book Prize, among others, and it's not rare. It's unsettling for me when a guest CV makes me feel inadequate. All of my guest CVs make me feel inadequate.
Oh, don't make them. Don't let that happen to you. Don't.
I'm like, oh, we've got this guy. Oh, was he? I should have done more with my life.
Oh, there's still time to do lots.
Yeah. Yes, with God willing.
Yes.
You're writing. What inspires you? What's your inspiration with your writing?
Wow, that's quite a big question, really, because all sorts of things. I mean, initially I started as a children's writer, so I guess my children were a big influence on me and inspiration. Not necessarily like stuff they said or into. It's just kind of
just like knowing them,
just wanting to write stuff that they might enjoy. And that's kind of how I started writing. Really, was because I wanted to write something for my son, my first son.
I don't have any children myself. I do have a cousin, my first cousin, who's he really turned 1 in November. So for his birthday, I bought him the Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh, it's a classic.
It's a classic, but part of the reason why I bought it is because it's one of my favorite anecdotes about George W. Bush, where George W. Bush was asked, what was your favorite book as a child? And he answered The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which was published when Bush was 23. So I bought my nickname for the baby cousin is the Monkey Man.
Okay.
So I bought him the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and I bought him like a cuddly monkey toy. And I was quite pleased that he was more interested in the Very Hungry Caterpillar than he was by the toy.
Yeah, it's amazing how fascinated children are with books. I think, in particular, like a tactile book like that, where she's got, obviously it's quite interactive with all the bits where he's eating, and the holes and stuff in the book. I think, that my kids always loved books, and they still do. Even my son, my youngest, has got a very severe dyslexia, finds can't read, finds reading very difficult. He still loves books. He still loves being read to, and he still loves seeing books and looking at them and touching them. So yeah, their books are wonderful things.
It's especially true, I think, obviously with many children not being able to go to school, or having not been able to go to school during, this, for want of a better word, clusterfuck of a pandemic. Parents reading to their children and telling their children stories, it assumes, I think, heightened importance.
Yeah, that's something that's always been about. Again, what goes back to why I kind of started wanting to write a story for him was to have that time in the evening, the bedtime story, which is such a vital time, because it's actually a time where often children get an opportunity to download, to express themselves, tell you about their days. And also, if you can read to them stories that might reflect something in the world that you can educate them about. So it's a really, really vital time. And yeah, I mean, if anything, hopefully that's us being locked down has meant that maybe more parents have had that opportunity, because they're not rushing back from work and missing that time.
When obviously, when a parent and a child, when they bond over a story, for me, it was always The Lion King. The Lion King. When a parent and a child bond over a story, especially one which teaches life lessons, I think, because The Lion King was my introduction to death. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen The Lion King. I should have said before I mentioned that, but but The Lion King was my introduction to death as a concept. The idea that life ends, and that was traumatic for me. I think to become acquainted with the idea of mortality, but it helped to have a parent with me, to guide me through that. And there's plenty of stories. I know obviously Lion King's a film. I mean, like the picture books that they made of them. But the Lion King, the Gruffalo is my other favorite example, because the Gruffalo for me, well, that's why I bought him for Christmas. The baby, I bought him the Gruffalo for Christmas. But it was the idea that the mouse was mightier than the Gruffalo, and that taught me to a certain point. I mean, I think the Gruffalo came out. I can't remember how old I was when I read it, but that I think communicates a great idea about the fact that don't judge by appearances, and even if you're smaller than the other guy, you can still be bloody terrifying.
Well, and also because it's very it always reminds me of sort of the Aesop fables. It's got that fable kind of feel about it, and a lot of Julia Donaldson's books. I like that. Wonderful story.
Donaldson's great. I'm trying to get her on the podcast.
Oh, it should be great.
But honestly, it's been such a privilege talking to you and discussing the work you do for ActionAid UK, your music, your writing. Giles, thank you so much.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure to meet you as well. I could be on blank someday.
Well, yes. We're well booked ahead, but yes, if you can wait a year.
When I'm a bit more high profile.
Yeah.
Giles Paley-Phillips, everybody. Join us next time. I'll be speaking to Christopher Miles, not Lady Gaga, as my producer insists that I keep having, just to wind me up. Stay safe, everybody.